What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If. If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my second channel, so if you want some more what ifs, go check out my other channels. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. Himawari faltered in her steps towards everyone when she saw with her Byakugan the dark chakra overtaking Naruto's body. It was like a sinister being enveloped itself around him, making her shiver. To Naruto's side, she spotted the Akatsuki member that took Gaara with him hiding under a bush. Without thinking twice, she turned and headed straight towards him while she trusted her brother and Kakashi. To handle Naruto, she couldn't forgive the Akatsuki for hurting kind people like her father and the Kazekage. She may not be so outspoken about her anger like Sarada and Boruto are, but she did feel it, and right now she wanted to show the Akatsuki exactly what happens when you try to hurt her family. Boruto stared stunned at his young father as he grew a tail made of an odd chakra. That's what Jiraiya-sama was talking about, Kakashi said as the chakra engulfed Naruto completely, forming the vague shape of a fox around his body. The Nine Tails cloak, that's the fox inside of Dad. Boruto scanned Naruto's chakra cloak in confusion. His father always glowed yellow when he used Kurama's chakra, but it looks nothing like his Nine Tails form. Naruto smiled sadistically. He yelled as he smashed to pieces the clay body of the clone Deidara left behind. The force of his punch caused the ground to erupt around him, a cloud of dust rising above the trees and rocking the earth. As the dust settled, Naruto appeared standing in the middle of his self-made crater before he jumped a little further away, his tail moving around like that of an actual fox. Boruto did a double take at the tail, noticing that somehow another one was growing from the cloak. Two tails next to Kakashi. Naruto's clone collapsed to his knees and clutched his head in pain, and so did the clones who stood guard next to Gaara. It burns. Boruto didn't know what to do. What should someone do when watching their young father and his clones suffer like that? This cloak covered Naruto seemed so menacing, filled with the urge to hurt others. Boruto's closed eye began bugging him, informing him of the amount of negative emotions in his vicinity. I'm well aware, thanks, he thought to himself sarcastically. Suddenly Naruto jumped in the air and punched a tree, destroying it and all the other trees behind it. Boruto gulped. This was definitely not good. Himawari heard the explosion and saw the damage, speeding up her steps and ignoring the ache in her foot. She didn't like this one bit, and she wanted to finish taking care of the Akatsuki member as soon as possible and get to Naruto. He needs help. Next to Kakashi, Naruto's clone dispelled already. How? Kakashi eyed Naruto worryingly. Jumping down from the branch, he landed next to Boruto behind Naruto. Immediately his student turned around with a growl. Easy, Naruto. Kakashi strived to remain calm. He saw how pale Boruto was as he looked at Naruto and hoped this wouldn't make the boy think too badly of Kakashi's adorable little student. Out of nowhere, Naruto launched himself at them, his fist ready to crush Kakashi before Boruto appeared to Naruto's side and kicked him away mid-air, sending him flying. Boruto glared at Naruto, but not the way you would glare with hatred and fear at a rampaging beast, but the way you would glare at a person you're fed up with. Would you stop it, or do you need me to kick your ass in order to make you stop? What is he? Kakashi frowned. Boruto, he's not thinking rationally. Kakashi tried to reason with the rookie. You can't know. Boruto sent a glare towards Kakashi too. He can't go ahead and do crazy shit like that. How am I supposed to react to this? Without waiting for an answer, he took a step closer to Naruto, who was walking on all four and scowling at Boruto. It'll be dangerous to try and get close to him. You have to. I don't give a crap. Boruto's voice was raw with an emotion Kakashi could not name. He's my he's my teammate. There's no way I can just ignore all of this. He took another step forward, and another. Naruto hissed at him and lunged at his throat, but Boruto jumped back and evaded him, pulling out a blunt kunai. You wanna go? Boruto taunted Naruto, making the latter agitated. Come on then, what, scared? I'll beat you. Naruto jumped at him, fist ready. Boruto evaded him again, this time barely escaping the groundbreaking punch that cracked the earth where he stood a moment ago. You're really trying to kill me, aren't you? Boruto smiled at Naruto sadly. Well, not the first time it happened to me. But he aimed a kick to Naruto's gut from his angle, but Naruto avoided it, jumping back. The chakra cloak covered teen growled with all his might, only making Boruto seem sadder. Why do you keep doing that? Boruto's lone eye shone before he lunged forward at a speed that astounded Kakashi. 1 second he was several meters in front of Naruto, and then he was behind him, the blunt kunai no longer in his hand but rather on its way to Naruto's back. Naruto's tail swung the weapon away, and he turned to look at Boruto, but the blonde teen was already in front of him, punching him in the gut. Naruto flew back, hitting a tree trunk and breaking it with the force of the blow he was dealt and sliding down to the ground. I hope that would knock the Nine Tails out of you. Boruto's tone held iron in it, but I guess I don't have Hima's touch when it comes to these things. Naruto rose to all four again, glaring at Boruto and walking in one direction and then the next like a caged animal. Kakashi glanced at Boruto, who was watching Naruto with anger and Sadness. Naruto. Boruto called out to the blonde, please come back. The request was odd-sounding, heartfelt and sincere, but there was an underlying tone beneath it. It was like Boruto was begging someone who was no longer there to come back to him. I know you're hurting over Gaara. He didn't call Gaara the Kazekage. Kakashi noted, trust me, I understand how it feels. Boruto walked closer to Naruto, his hands in the air. Naruto recoiled, snarling at him, but Boruto ignored his reaction, looking straight at Naruto, a pleading look in his eyes. But it gets better, he huffed in bemusement. Well, not better, and it never stops hurting, but you learn to live with it. Boruto was now closer to Naruto, who seemed somehow both agitated by the teen's closeness to him and a little bit relaxed by the genuine tone in Boruto's voice as he spoke. It sucks, you know. Boruto was now a mere few meters from Naruto, who flinched at Boruto's proximity, yet he didn't try to attack Boruto. Kakashi looked at it all in amazement. The way Boruto went from beating up Naruto and avoiding being beat up by quick reflexes only to trying to console him, or maybe that was the plan all along, get Naruto to let out some of his anger by trying to attack Boruto, get beaten back to his senses, and then be consoled. It royally sucks, I know. Boruto crouched in front of Naruto, who was growling slightly but didn't move, hypnotized by the person in front of him. But I'm here, you're not alone, you'll never be alone again. And with those words he leaned forward and brought Naruto in for a hug. Naruto immediately growled and snarled, fighting and scratching at Boruto's arms and back and face in order to make him let go, but Kakashi saw how his arms were putting less and less of a fight by the second, like something in Naruto wanted to sink into the embrace. His hand sneaked into his pouch, taking out the seal Jiraiya gave him for emergencies like this. Boruto squeezed Naruto as Kakashi snuck behind them, patting his back despite the many cuts. The blonde Jinchuriki was giving him the one-eyed rookie, made eye contact with Kakashi and urged him with his gaze, do what he said. Kakashi nodded, stepping in front of Naruto. The boy immediately began to struggle against Boruto again when he spotted his sensei, but it was no use, the blonde rookie having a metal grip on him. Kakashi breathed in, it's time to wake up Naruto, and with that he slapped the seal on Naruto's forehead. The effect was immediate, the chakra cloak dispersing away and Naruto's eyes going back to blue. The red, forgotten his snarl disappeared, leaving only a confused and hurt expression on the young boy's face as he slumped in Boruto's embrace. There, Boruto patted his back as Naruto breathed heavily. You're okay? Kakashi raised an eyebrow at the odd line, and Boruto shrugged. I'm not the best at comforting people. It seems to me like you did a pretty good job with this one. Kakashi gestured with his head at Naruto, who didn't make any moves to escape from Boruto's arms. Kakashi removed the seal from Naruto's forehead, leaning back to examine the boy. Are you alright now, Naruto? While the boy tried to catch his breath and answer, Kakashi glanced at the woods broken in Naruto's tantrum. Master Jiraiya, what did you see? What was the thing that made you give me the seal? Kakashi sensed someone approaching and turned around just as three women landed in the now clearing. Sakura was there, battered and bruised but overall fine. Supporting Chiyo with her body next to them was Sarada, who looked the worst out of all of them, with blood smeared on her face and the hems of her shirt tattered and a tear in the fabric indicating she was stabbed in the gut. Sarada. Boruto looked up from Naruto to stare at his wounded teammate. What the fuck? Boruto. Sarada's face sagged with relief before turning into an expression of dismay. Don't curse like that. Boruto moved and catched her just as her legs gave out, keeping her upright. Naruto was finally able to look up and see the newcomers finally caught up to you. Sakura smiled at him as Sakura. Naruto smiled back, his face showing how fatigued he was. You found us, nice work. Kakashi complimented them. Naruto and Sakura looked at each other. Boruto was checking Sarada's wounds more thoroughly from up close. We felt a huge tremor a few minutes ago, Sakura said in a questioning tone. I'm glad you're here, Naruto said, his face drenched in sweat and grim. So you guys did it? Yeah, Sakura nodded. Chiyo sighed and looked around. It looks like you're still having some trouble here though, unfortunately. Kakashi closed his eyes. What about Gaara? She asked, looking down. Where's he? Naruto clenched his teeth and looked away before gesturing with his chin at where his clones were holding the Kazekage's body. Chiyo nodded. Alright. Deidara pulled out of the bushes after seeing the girls joining the group of shinobi. Realizing that Sasori has been beaten, turning around, he came face to face with another girl. Her face shadowed, but her eyes white and glowing. He never knew such a little girl could invoke such fear in him. Himawari glared at the Akatsuki member with her Byakugan, her fists clenched. You, something in her chest tightened. Where do you think you're going? His eyes widened and his face went white. Who are MHM? Himawari raised a finger to shush him, the corners of her mouth ticking up. I'm very angry right now. He pulled back, staring at her. She tilted her head, scanning him up and them. Now what should we do? She brought her hand to her chin and thought, since I'm pretty angry, I want to punch you, but it also feels like it won't be enough for what you did to Naruto and Gaara. Himawari. She turned around to look at her uncle's face. She saw them come from behind her with her Byakugan, but she was busy being angry, so she didn't greet them. Brother Niji, how are you feeling? She let her gaze rack over him and check for any serious wounds. He seemed fine, if not a little worn out. I'm fine. What about Niji raised an eyebrow at her and her odd chatting companion behind her. Well, I think I sprained my ankle, but other than that I'm good. Himawari turned back to the frozen Akatsuki member. He on the other hand, her smile widened and the man shivered. Good work finding him. Niji guy complimented the Hyuga. Niji smirked. Child's play. Actually that's true. Himawari examined the many chakra points in the Akatsuki member's body. I used to play hide and seek all the time when I was a kid. I get it. The man spoke, his eyes locking on both Himawari and Niji, who had their dojutsu, the Byakugan, one of the Kekkai Genkai of Konoha, just like the Sharingan. He laughed bitterly. You used those eyes of yours to sneak up from my blind spot. This is my first time seeing it in person. I'd be curious to see how it differs from Itachi's Sharingan, but I think my escaping takes precedence at the moment. Himawari, tense, turning to face him fully. Ha guy smirked. You're looking at Team Guy here, my friend, the number one squad in Konoha. You're not going anywhere, that is a promise. Lee took a stance. I hope you're ready. 10-10 prepared her scroll and Niji leaned forward slightly. And it will be a shame if you left before I calm down, Himawari noted, pouting. I'm still pretty mad. Deidara smirked before disappearing from sight. All five of them hot on his heels, they met him in the middle. 10-10 throwing her weapons at him, and him deflecting them with a kunai in his mouth. He jumped backwards and then pushed himself off the tree he landed on with his feet, only for Lee to drop from above him and attempt to kick him. 10-10 threw a large shuriken at him that divided itself into 4 shuriken midair, getting stuck to the tree trunk he was running up on. Severe leaf hurricane guy kicked the tree, breaking it and making it fall to the ground. Deidara with it. The blonde man was running away, only for Lee to drop from above in front of him. Here I come, he shouted, and jumped in the air, roundhouse kicking and attempting to punch his head. Deidara avoided him, not noticing Lee had been pushing him to Himawari and Niji's range 8 trigrams. Air palm, they shouted, making a coordinated attack with a double gust of wind. The wind sent the man flying across the clearing until his back hit a tree, where he slid down before attempting to get up. Tenten's coordinated shurikens followed him up the tree he was climbing to avoid the weapons embedding themselves in the wood. Once they missed him, he jumped on a branch tree and then the next attempting to escape, so Himawari decided to do something about it. Taking a stance, she pointed her fingers at his escaping form and her vision locked on. She said, rushing ahead by pushing the ground with her right leg, forgetting it was injured and shooting forward after him. Himawari. Niji called after her in concern. She followed him through the woods, concentrating on his chakra network. If she could just get close enough. She was so focused on him she hadn't noticed what he was running towards. He's dropping, 10-10 said as Deidara dropped from the branches and landing in another clearing. Watch it, we don't know what he's planning. Stay on your guard, guy cautioned, but Himawari was locked on the Akatsuki member, and even if she was in a state of consciousness, she still needed to finish thing with him. Dropping after him, she hit the ground running and ignoring the pain shooting up her ankle. Deidara landed next to the white body of a clay bird and Himawari landed just in front of him. Behind her, Team Guy landed but kept a safe distance away. Himawari, draw back, Niji told her, but she shook her head. Himawari, came Boruto's distressed voice as he and the rest of the group were a mere dozen meters away from them all. Deidara let the kunai drop from his mouth and instead latched onto the bird's body with his teeth, trying to rip it apart. After a moment he managed to take out a bit of clay, with his mouth rising to stand tall next to the bird and smirking at them, jumping just in front of Himawari and chewing the piece he bit out like it was gum. I think it's about time I revealed my ultimate work of art, he exclaimed before swallowing. Himawari, watching as the piece of clay infused with chakra made its way down his body. Suddenly his body started to grow violently bigger, growing lumps all over. Her eyes widened when she witnessed the drastic change in his chakra network. He's concentrating all of his chakra into a single point. Himawari cried out, oh no. Niji turned to the rest of them, coming to the same conclusion. Everyone get out of here immediately. Himawari turned back to the man, angrier than ever. First he hurts the Kazakage, now he has the nerve of threatening her friends and family. Not acceptable. She may be an Uzumaki, but she's also a Hyuga, and as a daughter of the Hyuga she will not allow anyone to threaten the thing she cares for. Everyone else moved back, but her anger ebbed inside of her, growing in size like Deidara's body. Himawari, both Niji and Boruto shouted, but it was too late. Himawari felt the edges of her consciousness darken and she knew what was going to happen next. She smiled confidently just as she lost control again. Art is an explosion, Deidara declared as he exploded. Boruto watched that moment in slow motion. Deidara blew up, Team Guy racing towards them to escape the explosion, and Himawari striking a stance and drawing her palms back. The heat from the explosion was making the air around the slow down, feeling almost like he was swimming in jello. He pushed Sarada behind him and stared at Niji, who was looking back at where Himawari was standing alone against the explosion, threatening to swallow her at any moment. And then the world around him started to warp. He panicked. The last thing he heard before disappearing was Himawari shouting Hima. The smoke settled around them All of them suddenly next to each other unharmed. Everybody looked around disoriented as a hole above their heads sucked in all of the remaining smoke and dust. It worked. Kakashi panted just in time. They all looked at where the explosion was happening, not seeing anything but a large crater. Boruto gasped. Himawari, he yelled, stumbling to his feet and running to the crater with Niji following after him. Reaching the edge of the crater, he peered down. In the middle laid his little sister, unconscious and wounded. Her yellow hoodie's side painted red as blood seeped through it. Boruto slid down the crater and ran to his sister, checking on her. Niji examined her with his Byakugan. She used too much chakra and has several injuries, including a few cracked ribs, a broken ankle, and a deep cut on her stomach. Boruto gritted his teeth. She's so reckless. What was she thinking? I'm in agreement. Niji's tone of voice sounded peeved. When she wakes up, I suggest we give her a piece of our minds. Deal? Boruto nodded before embracing his sister tightly and breathing in her scent. Thank God you're alright, he whispered in her ear. Boruto. Sarada's voice came from outside the crater. How's Himawari? She's alive, Boruto shouted back, rising to his feet and holding Himawari in his arms. But she's getting a scolding after she wakes up. Sarada sighed in relief. He and Niji climbed out and walked towards the group. Boruto making sure Himawari was comfortable before placing her on the ground. Sakura, do you mind? Right? Sakura gently moved away from Chio and removed her gloves, starting the treatment and closing the wound on Himawari's stomach. I don't have much chakra right now, so this will have to make do until we reach Suna. Thank you. Boruto watched as some of the color returning to his sister's cheeks and her eyes fluttering open, staring blankly at the sky. Big brother, I'm here. He squeezed her hand. How are you feeling? Everything hurts, she admitted. How are everyone else? Boruto scoffed. Everyone's fine, he told her. Worry about yourself for a change. She smiled, then winced. Sorry, it's fine, he sighed. Can you stand? I can. She pulled herself to a sitting position, but her eyes were squinting as if she was trying to see something from really far away, and she was blinking rapidly. But I don't think my leg can take it. Right? Niji said. She had a broken ankle. Lee can carry you. Niji volunteered his teammate. Right, Lee? Of course. Niji. Lee crouched down next to Himawari. Feel free to use me as a means of transportation. Thank you, Lee. Himawari sighed as she climbed onto his back. Kakashi chose that moment to collapse, falling down and having Naruto to catch him. Kakashi-sensei, hey, are you alright? I don't get it. Sakura stared at her. Sensei, what did you do? Kakashi tried to catch his breath for a moment. Sent the explosion off into a different space. You sent it somewhere, Sakura repeated in confusion. I am not sure I understand really, Lee said as he hoisted Himawari over his back, but it seems the enemy has been defeated. Tenten, do you agree? What the are you kidding? What the hell are you asking me for? Tenten moved away from her teammate, her reaction making Himawari hum. Lee is in trouble. Kakashi chuckled. More importantly, is everyone okay? Two of Naruto's clones jumped down from the branch. They were perched on Gaara's body. Between them, one of them looked at Gaara and then at Sakura. Sakura, can you? Sakura nodded. They came out of the forest and walked to a field in order to get away from the reminder of the fight's end. Take care of their wounds. Gaara's body was gently placed in front of Sakura on the grass, and she was channeling her remaining chakra into him. Sakura. Naruto stared at her as her hands moved away from Gaara, and she stood up, not looking at him directly and shaking her head. Naruto looked down at Gaara's face, looking so serene as if he was only sleeping, and felt his eyes burn. The silence was suffocating. The only sound heard was the wind rustling the grass around them. Sakura turned to walk away from Gaara, leaving only Naruto to stand in front of the Kazekage as everyone else stood behind him. Naruto's lip quivered and his shoulder shook, tears streaming down his face as he silently wept for his friend. Why? He asked. Why is it always Gaara? This wasn't fair. If he dies like this. He walked towards the young redhead laying on the grass. He's the Kazekage. He just became the Kazekage. Try to calm yourself, Naruto. Uzumaki Chio told him, void of emotion. Naruto whirled around to face her. You shut up. He threw his hand protectively in front of Gaara to shield him from everything. Tears streamed down his face openly, but he didn't care. None of it mattered. Just shut up. If all of you Suna shinobi hadn't put a monster inside of Gaara, then none of this would have ever happened to him. He choked on the lump in his throat. Did you ever even consider how Gaara felt? Did you ever even ask? He closed his eyes, letting the tears stream down his face freely. Calling us Jinchuriki. What gives you the right to label us? Who are you to decide someone else's fate? He stumbled on his feet, shaking, not being able to be silent anymore. He buried his face in his hand, lowering his head so nobody could see him. I couldn't save Sasuke, and I can't save Gaara either. For 3 years I've trained so hard, but nothing has changed. There was a rustle of movement, and then his hand was forcefully removed from his face. He stared up at Boruto, whose pained expression matched Naruto's inner storm. Without a word he hugged him. Naruto stood frozen for a moment before breaking and letting his head fall onto Boruto's shoulder. Boruto wrapped arm around Naruto's torso and his chin dug into the crook of his neck. Nobody spoke. Having Boruto hug him felt so comforting. He sank down shaking. There were the sounds of steps behind him as Chio made her way shakingly to Gaara. Naruto stopped crying, though tears were still running down his cheeks, and stared at her in confusion through the mist of his eyes. She sat on her knees next to him, looking down at his face and closing her eyes before placing her hands on top of his chest and channeling her chakra into him. The effect was so strong it shook the ground for a moment, sending out a warm wave. Lady Chiyo, that jutsu? Sakura gasped, and Sarada stared wide-eyed at the elderly woman. Chiyo turned to look at them and smiled, not answering. I don't get it. Naruto stared at the woman. What's she trying to do? Is that guy? Yeah, Kakashi confirmed. Naruto didn't understand. What was she doing to Gaara? Leave him alone, will you? What do you think you're doing? He was about to step forward to stop her when both Boruto stopped him, placing a hand on his chest. Boruto, what? Boruto turned to Naruto, the shadow of his scar seeming darker than usual. When he glanced over to Sakura, she looked at him with hardened resolve, like this was something they needed to allow Chiyo to do. It's gonna be alright, Sakura told him confidently. She's bringing him back. Naruto's eyes widened and his gaze shot back to Chiyo. Bring Gaara back? Was it possible she's bringing him back? He repeated after her. What are you talking about? I mean, how's that even possible? This jutsu? Sakura began. Only Lady Chiyo knows it. It's a special jutsu. What, are you serious? Chiyo faltered for a moment before continuing again, the chakra around her hands fading. Damn it, not enough chakra. Come on. Naruto stepped forward, crouching in front of her and offering her his hands. You can use my chakra, take as much as you need to. He practically pleaded. That'll work, won't it, Granny? Please. Chiyo stared at him in surprise before her face softened. She glanced at Gaara before returning to looking at him. Place your hands on top of mine, son, she told him weakly. He was startled for a moment before snapping out of it and nodding, doing as she said. Immediately the glow of chakra amplified the jutsu continuing to work. It hurt him, and he understood why Chiyo looked so in pain while performing it, but it was worth it if it meant saving Gaara. He gritted his teeth and powered through it. His face were already drenched with sweat, but he didn't care. In this world of shinobi created by frivolous old people, it's a great comfort to know that new souls like yourself have come along, Chiyo told him with a small smile. Naruto stared at her in bewilderment. What did she mean by that? Up till now everything I've done in my life has been wrong, she continued, but at least here in my final hour I can finally do something right for a change. She looked at Gaara's face before looking up at the sky. Suna and Konoha, may the future that awaits them be different from the way things were in our time. She looked down at their joined hands, smiling. This special power of yours that Kakashi spoke of, that power will change the future dramatically, become a Hokage, the likes of which has never been seen. And as for you, Sakura, Sarada, she addressed the two, in the future help those closest to your hearts, not some old grandmother with one foot in the grave. You're a lot like me, girls. So few women possess such strong spirits. You'll surpass your master as a kunoichi, I've little doubt. Right, they both answered, their voices shaking. Finally she looked straight into Naruto's eyes. Naruto, do an old woman a favor, will you? Naruto nodded. You are the only person in the world who knows the extent of Gaara's pain. He also knows your pain. Please look after Gaara. Naruto glanced at the Kazekage's face and closed his eyes. He was with everyone he knew who supported him, all of those who acknowledged him, but something was missing. What's missing? Gaara. He walked through the crowd of people searching for something, but what was it? Gaara running through the grass. He searched for an answer. Gaara opened his eyes. Gaara, who is that? He wondered. Who's calling me? That'd be your friend, a voice told him. Gaara turned around to see a young man standing in front of him, looking right back at him. His dark hair was spiky, and those green eyes they bore into him, his face reminded Gaara of his brother painted red. Who are you? Gaara asked him. The man shook his head. It doesn't matter, you'll know eventually. Gaara, the man pointed at where the voice was coming from. Aren't you going to answer? Gaara shook his head. I won't. Why? Because eventually even that voice will go quiet and I'll be alone. The man frowned. Everybody is alone at some point. I was too. Gaara, really? Gaara glanced up at him from the ground. Yes, he nodded. And then one day I wasn't anymore. He glanced down at Gaara. But you shouldn't worry about stuff like that if you're not alone. Gaara, I'm not alone. Gaara couldn't understand. Of course not. The man pointed in the direction of the voice again. Would someone who is alone be called to come back like that? Gaara, am I not alone anymore? Gaara was too afraid to look where the man pointed. What if this is not real? What if the voice calling him stops? You will never be alone again. The man gave him a small smile. Now go to your friend. He pulled Gaara up by the hand and then pushed him forward in the direction of the voice. Wait. Gaara turned around, but the man was already gone. Go to your friend. Gaara looked around for the voice again. Gaara, who is it? He asked, looking down. He stared at a hand. This hand? Oh, it's just my hand. He tried to clutch the air. My hand is. Vision cleared a little. In front of him a person who recognized was sitting on the ground, curled to a ball and alone. Me. He was crying and shouting, but frozen in time, so no voice was heard. Who am I? He was alone. He was a monster. He was something. He wasn't anything. I am. A hand on his shoulder caused him to look up and see a person with whiskers and blue eyes smiling brightly at him. Gaara stared wide-eyed at his friend, who has grown since the last time he saw him. Naruto. He turned to look around him, stunned, and realized they were surrounded by people, all of them looking at him. What is this? They all came running to help you, Naruto told him with a grin. You've had everyone worried half to death. Lord Gaara, one of the shinobi ran forward. Sir, are you alright? Gaara, still shell-shocked, could only nod and stare as everybody's faces lit up and they cheered, all seeming relieved. Yeah, he came back. Long live our Kazekage. All of the Suna shinobi surrounding them continued to cheer and hug each other, some even opting to openly weep. Temari walked towards them and kneeled down in front of him, smiling. "You sure had us worried there," Naruto told him, though he didn't seem mad at Gaara. "No kidding." Kankuro walked next to Temari, his head uncovered and his usual gear not equipped. "You caused us a whole lot of grief there, little brother." Ugh. Temari rolled her eyes. "Will you two quit putting on airs already?" Gaara's the Kazekage. Remember, she made a clicking sound with her tone to make sure her displeasement with Naruto and Kankuro was well established. "Show a little respect, you nitwits." Naruto frowned at that while a sound of laughter was heard from behind them. Turning to the source, Gaara saw an almost identical twin of Naruto holding his stomach as he laughed, pointing at Naruto. "She totally lectured you just now, ha." "Hey, Naruto's eye twitched. "You wanna go?" The other Naruto said, "Pretty sure I could take you." "Knock it off." A girl with red glasses next to the blonde smacked the back of his head and he yelped. Suddenly Temari grabbed Naruto by the shoulder and pushed him away, leaning closer to her little brother. "Gaara, talk to me. How do you feel?" She scanned his face worriedly. Gaara turned away from her and attempted to get up, his limbs shaking at the thought. "Easy," Temari warned him. "You shouldn't get up too quickly. Your body hasn't fully recovered from the rigor mortis yet." Gaara leaned back in defeat and let out a barely audible sigh. Naruto was relieved to see how well Gaara was doing right away, sighing and leaning back a bit as he finally relaxed after this long and stressful week. Behind them, some of the shinobi started bickering. "I thought we lost him." Asuna shinobi wept. "Without the Kazekage, I don't." Aogi cried out when a kunoichi hit his head. "Get a hold of yourself," she berated him. "There's no way we'd ever lose our Lord Gaara." She sighed. "Lord Gaara is the hottest thing ever. He's a quiet, wholesome, strong and elite warrior." Another girl joined in with her musing. "Yeah, Lord Gaara is totally gorgeous, isn't he? After all, he is our Kazekage. If anything should happen again, I'll protect him." The first girl exclaimed. "With all my heart." "No, I will." The second girl pushed her away and they ran to Gaara, pushing each other out of the way. "Lord Gaara," they shouted, one of them elbowing Naruto and pushing him tumbling down the grass. He landed on his side and frowned. "I know I'm still a genin and all, but come on, cut me a break," he uttered in apprehension as he eyed the girls surrounding Gaara critically. A giggle from above caused him to look up and see Himawari still looking pretty weak, offering him her hand. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, I'm fine." Naruto grabbed her hand and got up, dusting himself off. "If it helps, I think you're pretty cool." She smiled at him cheerfully. He blinked and rubbed his neck sheepishly. "Thanks, Himawari." And Naruto. Kankuro walked closer to them. "Don't sweat it, women always go for the cool elite type of guys, so what can you do? Am I right?" Naruto pouted, though his expression had made apparent his dismay of the subject. "I'm pretty sure Shikamaru said something like that once too." He glared at the girls who were trying to get closer to Gaara, only to be stopped by Temari, who tried to shield her brother from them. "Hey, Naruto." Kankuro smiled at him. "Thank you." Naruto laughed. "Hey, don't look at me, it's Granny over there that you should be thanking." He gestured with his head towards Chio, who was laying with her eyes closed in Sakura's arms while Sarada was sitting next to them. She saved Gaara with some kind of incredible medical ninjutsu. She tired herself out and fell asleep, but I'm sure she'll be fine once we get to the village. "No, she won't," was Kankuro's sharp answer. Naruto didn't understand. Granny Chio used that jutsu. Kankuro was looking at Chio with a hardened expression. "What are you talking about? Why won't she wasn't using medical jutsu." Kankuro explained it was a reanimation ninjutsu. "Granny Chio is dead." Naruto's eyes widened at that and he whipped his head to look at woman in Sakura's arms. "What are you saying? How can she be dead?" Naruto shook his head and turned to Kankuro again. "It's a ninjutsu that allows you to bring someone back from the dead in exchange for your own life." Kankuro was quiet for a while after that before he spoke again. "Years ago, and our puppet master Kora Jutsu was secretly developed to breathe life into actual puppets." Granny Chio led that project slowly. Everybody's eyes drifted to Chio. "They did eventually come up with a method, but midway they decided it was too risky to get involved. It was classified as this forbidden jutsu before human testing could be done and sealed away." Naruto stared unmoving as he recalled the smile and last words of Chio as she was bringing Gaara back in this world of shinobi created by frivolous old people. "It's a great comfort to know that new souls like yourself have come along. Up till now, everything I've done in my life has been wrong, but at least here in my final hour I can do something right for a change." Sunagakure and Kanagakure, may the future that awaits them be different from the one in our time. This couldn't be happening. Naruto slowly got up, staring at the unmoving body of the old woman become a Hokage, the likes of which has never been seen. The sun set down, covering everyone with darkness. "Look at her." The wrinkly man that was with Chio and Suna, her brother, said. "I half expect her to burst out laughing instead of looking so peaceful." Yes, a tear ran down Sakura's cheek as she hugged Chio closer. Sarada also leaned in and buried her head in the elder woman's shoulder, seeking comfort and hiding her tears. "Yes, Naruto." Temari spoke to him. "There really is something different about you." Naruto turned to stare at her, not believing it's true. She continued, "You do have the power to change people." She looked Down her eyes growing soft. Chiyo-sama has always said that she didn't care about the future of Sunagakure. She wasn't the kind of person who would do something like this for Gara. Gara closed his eyes at that last part, his face grim. Lady Chiyo has entrusted the future to you, and Gara. Kakashi told him it was a death befitting a shinobi, and Naruto didn't look at him just like the third. He smiled a bit. I get it now, I understand what Granny wished for. He felt someone place their hand on his shoulder, glancing sideways to see Boruto's profile is permanently shut eye looking darker in the dimming light of the evening. In front of them, Gara struggled to get up. Lord Gara, one of the girls tried to help him out. Are you alright? I'm fine. Gara shook her off, pushing himself to a stand. He would have tripped forward too if Naruto hadn't moved to his side and grabbed the Kazekage by the arm, helping him up. They both walked forward, coming to a halt in front of Sakura and Sarada, looking at Chiyo. Everyone in the silence, even Gara's soft voice was heard through the crowd. Pray for Lady Chiyo, bid her farewell. He closed his eyes. Naruto and the others following his example. Night had fallen at last. Himawari, are you okay? Niji's question drew Boruto's attention as they were walking to Suna with the rest of the Suna shinobi. Himawari was rapidly blinking and squinting her eyes, and even though Lee was carrying her on his back, she seemed in pain. Well, my eyes have been bugging me ever since a little while ago, she admitted. Probably overused them. Boruto sighed in resignation, knowing full well it was too soon and too late for any lecture about keeping herself safe. Instead, he placed his hand over her eyes. Just go to sleep and rest, she obliged, fluttering her eyes closed and sinking into sleep. Boruto rubbed his head, tired as well. She probably used the Byakugan too much, he told Niji. The Hyuga nodded, frowning. She should know better than that, haven't she been taught? Boruto shrugged. You have to remember who's her dad though. Niji huffed. I don't need the reminder, thank you. Boruto chuckled before breaking into yawning. Tired? Niji raised an eyebrow at him. Probably less than any of you guys, but yeah. Boruto shoved his hands in his pockets. I'm dying to get there and go to sleep for a week. We'd probably only stay there until Himawari, Sarada, and Sakura are well enough to move out, Niji said logically. Speaking of Sarada, Boruto trailed off while his eye tried to spot Sarada in the front walking with Sakura. Oh, Niji's tone made Boruto look at him. Was he smirking? Are you worried about Sarada? Boruto flushed, but pretended he didn't know where Niji was heading with that. Shut it, brother Niji, he grumbled. Or do you want me to bring up you and a certain weapons expert? Niji's hand clamped his mouth as his uncle glared at him. Be quiet, he told Boruto hastily, and there's nothing to say about that. Boruto removed his uncle's hand from his mouth and snorted. Sure there isn't, there's not now. Shut up if you say so, brother Niji, Boruto said in a sing-song voice. Tch, Niji clicked his tongue. I can see how you're Naruto's son. The intelligence is similar. Hey, in the sky the sun was slowly coming out again. A new dawn. Time skip. Boruto sat in his sister's hospital room at the Sunagakure hospital and watched as she slept. Himawari's eyes were covered with a white blindfold and her right foot was held in place by a cast. Under her hospital gown he knew were also many bandages and healing ointments. She was hurt probably the most out of the whole rescue party, and he couldn't help her. He and Niji had to come up with a way to explain to the doctor who checked on her earlier why her eyes took so much damage. To save time and questions, they explained she has a dojutsu and had overused it. The doctor ordered them not to let her take the blindfold off for at least a whole week, and even afterwards she will only be able to take it off for a few hours a day the following week until she got checked by a medic again at their village. Boruto didn't need Niji or the doctor to tell him that Himawari might go blind if she doesn't do exactly that. Sighing, he squeezed her hand before grabbing his jacket and heading out of the room. He got out of the entire ordeal mostly scratch-free other than chakra deprivation and some minor bruising, while Himawari and Sarada were pretty badly injured on some level. He kind of resented the fact they got hurt and he's supposed to protect them, but he wasn't. Even they're walking down the hallway to the lobby, his jacket slung lazily over his shoulder. He reminisced over the other day when they returned Gara to the village. Chiyo's burial was held a day after that, and Boruto attended in Sarada's place. Seeing how she was too injured to go herself, he knew how much it hurt her not being able to go, so he made sure to stop by her room afterward and tell her quietly how it went. Reaching the lobby, he ran into Team Guy, who were entering the hospital. Niji noticed him instantly, signaling him over. Boruto, were you visiting Himawari? Boruto nodded, not failing to notice his uncle's teammates listening in on the conversation, probably trying to get more information about Himawari. Yeah, he pointedly looked at Niji. She's resting now, so I didn't stay long. Niji saw his teammates' interested expressions and sighed, looking irked. Very well, I might visit her later then. I'm sure she'll like that. Boruto smiled and glanced at the clock above the nurse station. 11 in the morning, and he hadn't had breakfast yet. I'm gonna head out to eat something, so I'll see you later. As he moved to the door, Niji's hand on his arm stopped him. Boruto, you know this wasn't your fault, right? Boruto froze, glancing at his uncle. I know, he reassured Niji, ignoring the bitter taste the words left in his mouth. I know I couldn't do anything. Niji didn't look convinced, but he released his arm nonetheless and gave him a small nod. As long as you remember that. Boruto walked through the door squinting against the harsh sunlight and shielding his eye with his hand. I know that he thought to himself bitterly, but that doesn't make it better. Shaking his head, he went out in search of a place to eat breakfast in the busy streets. How are you doing, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked Kakashi, who was sitting up against the head of his hospital bed. I'm fine, Sakura, Kakashi assured her beloved orange book in hand. This is just chakra deprivation, nothing more. This isn't something to be taken lightly, she scolded him. You should be more careful. Yes, sensei. Naruto grinned. Especially when you're so old. Kakashi glared at his student. I'm not that old, Naruto. So you're Naruto, laughed Sakura, hid her smile behind her hand, and Kakashi sighed. Even if he was being insulted, it was nice seeing Naruto back to his usual self now that the Kazekage was alright. Naruto's worried exterior melted and he relaxed again, much to Kakashi and Sakura's relief. By the looks of it, Sensei, Sakura looked at Kakashi. We might be able to leave back to the village tomorrow after all. Kakashi nodded, the air shifting more serious. Good, because I hear there's a lot that is waiting for us to do once we get back. Sakura looked down, her eyes becoming more sad. Silence had fallen over them for a few minutes, each to their own thoughts, before Sakura got up from her seat. Well, I still have to visit Sarada and see how she's doing, so I'll see you guys later. Kakashi nodded in understanding. Send her our regards. Sakura smiled and opened the door, only to run directly into Guy and his team as they were entering. Kakashi, my eternal rival, let's have a contest. 10-10 sighed an Exprahastion, pinching the bridge of her nose. He can't have a contest, Guy sensei, he's injured. That is true. Guy paused for a second, bringing his hand to his chin, and thought, very well, we'll just have a match without exerting any energy. That's not possible if it's Uniji pointed out, seeming as tired of his teacher's antics as 10-10 was. Are you leaving already, Sakura Lee asked Sakura, who was still at the entrance to the room. She smiled, nodding. I'm going to see Sarada, and then I want to go look for something to eat. I see. Lee gave her a thumbs up, as expected of you, a youthful medic. 10-10 raised an eyebrow at him. Why does everything has to do with youth? When it comes to you, don't question their madness. 10-10 Niji shook his head. You know better than that. I know. 10-10 crossed her arms. Anyway, I'm leaving now, sensei. Sakura walked out the door. See you guys later. See you, Naruto called after her before turning to Niji. Hey Niji, how's Himawari doing? Niji frowned. Himawari is doing fine, he said, though he didn't seem too happy about it. It's Boruto I'm worried about. Oh. Kakashi looked at the Hyuga. He still didn't understand the odd connection between Niji and the siblings, and any information would be helpful. How come? Because Niji crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. As I know him, Boruto is probably blaming himself for her getting hurt. He always blames himself, and I fear it's taking a toll on him. You seem to be pretty close with them, Kakashi noted, prying a little. Yet from what I understand, they're new to the village. Niji's jaw clenched, understanding where Kakashi's mind is. I met the two of them on their first day in the village, and we've stayed in close contact ever since. That is all I see. Kakashi knew there's more to it, but decided to let it go. It was clear he wasn't getting much out of the Hyuga. Deciding to change the subject, he turned to Guy. In other news, I think it will be best if we start heading back tomorrow. Guy nodded in agreement. Yes, the journey will be a long one, so it is best to get an early start. We're heading back so soon? Naruto asked, looking a little sad. Oh man, but I barely had any time to catch up with Gaara. He's in the hospital, isn't he? Kakashi reminded his student. Just visit him later. You're right. Naruto's face lit up. I'll go right now. He got up from his chair and ran to the door, pushing it open and running out of it. Kakashi watched his student go with a sigh. No matter what, Naruto is always going to be an hyperactive, unpredictable number one troublemaker, and Kakashi was happy because of it. Sarada was reading a novel one of the nurses got for her when a knock was heard on her door. Sarada, what's Sakura doing here? She frowned in confusion. Come in. The door slid open and Sakura walked in, smiling. Hey, how are you doing? Sarada smiled back at her as the pink-haired medic took a seat next to her bed. I'm fine, she said, placing a hand on where Sasori's blade pierced her. Thanks to the medics here, all my injuries are barely going to scar. That's good to hear, Sakura said, but Sarada noticed that there was an underlying nervous tone in her voice. What's wrong? She asked. Wrong? Nothing's wrong. Sakura shook her head frantically, but Sarada wasn't buying it. Sakura, she made her young mother look at her. I know something's up. What is it? Sakura bit her lip. It's just. She glanced at where the bandaged wound on Sarada's stomach was. Why did you jump in front of the blade? Sarada blinked. What, Sasori's blade? Sakura repeated. Why did you take the attack instead of me? Sarada's expression morphed into understanding. So that was it, wasn't it? Did you think I jumped because I thought you could handle it? Sakura looked down, embarrassed. Sakura. Sarada placed her hand on top of Sakura's hands, which were folded in the girl's lap. I don't think you're weak at all, really. Sakura looked up at her in confusion. Then why did I take the hit for you? Sarada smiled a bit, thinking that from Sakura's perspective that would seem a little strange, because I couldn't just let you get hurt if I could help it. Not because I think you're weak, she hurried to say when Sakura opened her mouth to comment, but because you're my friend and I lost too many friends recently to lose another one. That bit of sincerity seemed to make Sakura understand. I keep Forgetting that you're not from Konoha originally, Sakura said apologetically. I'm sorry, Sarada. Sarada shook her head with a smile. Don't worry about it. She squeezed Sakura's hands. Just remember you're pretty badass, so don't go assuming I think you're weak or something silly like that, okay? Sakura laughed. You're not so bad yourself, she told Sarada with a twinkle in her eyes. Now that was the Sakura Sarada knew from her time, confident, playful, strong. Thanks. She rolled her eyes sarcastically and moved her hand from Sakura's, placing it in her lap. So Sakura changed the subject. I've been meaning to ask, but are you and Boruto? Sarada's cheeks flushed. No, she exclaimed. No, it's not like that. Sakura smirked, leaning closer to Sarada's blushing face. Are you sure? Her tone full of teasing. Not you too. Sarada buried her face in her hands. Sakura laughed at her mortification. I'm glad my pain is amusing you, Sarada grumbled. Sorry, Sakura said between giggles. I just think you guys are cute together is all. Sarada pouted. Gee, thanks. Okay, I get it. Sakura shook her head, though the mirth in her eyes didn't fade no more, implying you and Boruto are totally in love with each other, she added, smirking. Sarada glared at her, making the pinkette burst out laughing again. Ugh, you're the worst. Sarada sighed, looking away from her. Okay, I'm done. Sakura patted her shoulder. No more teasing, I promise. Good. Sarada turned back to her. It's enough that I have to listen to Himawari go on and on about it. I don't need you jumping on the train too. Sakura blinked. Jumping on the what? Sarada clapped a hand on her mouth. Stupid. Her brain screamed at her. They don't have trains yet. It's nothing, just an expression. Okay. Sakura shook her head, shrugging. Anyway, what are you reading? She pointed at the novel in Sarada's lap. Oh, this. Sarada grabbed her book to show Sakura the cover. One of the nurses gave it to me. It's an historic fantasy novel, Tales of Fate. Sakura read the title out loud. What's it about? Sarada turned the book to her, looking at the illustrated anemones and daffodils decorating the cover in yellow and purple. I don't really understand it, but if mentions a prison and an inferno as well as the land of the dead. She ran her fingers over the hardcover. But it sends a pretty interesting message that life is not something that begins and then stops, but just continues to no end. Sakura nodded. That's pretty heavy. Yes, Sarada said thoughtfully. I think my dad would have liked this book. Did he like to read books? Sakura asked, making Sarada laugh lightly. Not really, but he did have a sort of odd view on life. Maybe he read this book. Maybe. Sakura smiled. He sounds like an interesting person. Sarada choked a laugh. You have no idea. They talked more about books they've read, discussing the philosophy and psychology that went into writing the characters, and for the first time in a while Sarada felt at home. Hey Boruto. Naruto spotted the other blonde in the crowd of people in the bustling shopping street. Wait up. Boruto turned to look at him, looking somewhat surprised. Naruto, he greeted him. What's up? Nothing much, Naruto answered the both of them, resuming their walk. What are you doing? I'm looking for a place to eat at, Boruto explained, his stomach growling. Haven't had breakfast yet. Naruto nodded in understanding. Me too, he said, patting his belly. I wonder if they have a ramen stand here. Boruto laughed. I doubt it, he said, one hand slung over his shoulder holding his jacket. And besides, isn't it bad for your health to eat ramen this early? Says the guy who works at a ramen shop. Naruto countered. I work there. I don't eat there. Boruto shot back. Himawari usually brings me lunch. I don't get it. Naruto shook his head in disbelief. If I worked at a Chiraka's I'd eat there every day. Don't you already do that without working there? Boruto asked him with a raised eyebrow. Naruto sent him a confused look. How'd you no? Boruto's eye widened in panic. Because the old man and I am mentioned it. Naruto blinked before rubbing his neck bashfully. Oh man, they talk about me. I'm kinda embarrassed. Boruto gave him a weirded out look. Why are you getting so bashful for talk about weird? Hey, Naruto cried out. I'm not that weird, so you admit you are a bit weird? Boruto smirked as Naruto struggled to come up with a comeback. Whatever, Naruto huffed, making Boruto laugh. Sorry. He shook his head. It's cool. Naruto looked at him more carefully. Up till that point Naruto had only seen Boruto tense. Either it was from worrying over Himawari and Sarada or from the chase after the Akatsuki. It didn't seem like he relaxed much, but here they were and Boruto was laughing and finally looking like he didn't want to jump out of his own skin. Boruto glanced at him and caught him staring. What? He asked him. Nothing, it's just. Naruto tore his gaze off Boruto. You look more comfortable. Boruto gave him a funny look. Weirdo, I'm not weird. How about lame then? How am I lame? Boruto raised an eyebrow. Come on, who wears that much orange? Orange is cool, it's memorable. Naruto argued. It's lame. Boruto smirked at him. Super lame. Oh yeah. Naruto scanned him. Like wearing so much black is cool. You look like an emo. Boruto's cheeks flushed slightly. Not do 2 not do 2 arg. They both glared at each other. Suddenly a loud growling sound came from both their stomachs, stopping the argument. Wanna get some breakfast? Naruto asked him. As long as it's not breakfast ramen. Boruto looked at him critically. Seriously, that stuff is bound to cause you some heart problems later on. Not true. Naruto shook his head. Ramen is super healthy, you know. Boruto sighed. You know, the saddest part of this is that you actually believe that. What's that supposed to mean? Naruto glared at his companion as they entered a small food establishment that caught their eye. Never mind that. Boruto grabbed the back of his chair and drew it back, taking a sit in front of Naruto. I Thought you were at the hospital. Naruto sat down and grabbed one of the menus the waiter offered them. I went to visit Kakashi-sensei and then I stopped by Gaara's, but he was asleep, so I figured I'll come back later. It's good that he's back. Boruto sipped from the water glass he was given. The villagers seemed happy too. Of course they'll be. Naruto waved the waiter over, ready to order. He's their Kazekage. After all that he is. Boruto nodded thoughtfully. The conversation paused for a moment as they both ordered light breakfast, some sandwiches and juices, watching the waiter leave before continuing. Anyway, Boruto tapped his finger on the table. Do you know when we're leaving? I think Kakashi-sensei said something about tomorrow. Why? Naruto watched Boruto's finger pause in the air before resuming. Nothing, it's just something Sarada told me yesterday. Boruto leaned his chin on his hand and glanced out of the window hopefully. Himawari will be well enough by then. How's she doing? Naruto asked, remembering what Neji said. Better. Thankfully a small smile etched itself to Boruto's lips. But she'll be out of commission for a while. No missions until she heals completely. Sounds rough. Naruto frowned, a wave of concern washing over him. Has she ever been injured like that before? Boruto laughed. Not like that. No. He shook his head. Himawari is a badass. She usually beats up the bad guys before they have a chance to get close enough to hurt her. Who taught you two to fight? Naruto inquired, nodding at the waiter who arrived at their table with their plates of sandwiches and the tall juice glasses. Boruto's smile turned sad. Well, our parents taught us the basics and the rest we learned through school and teachers. They taught you in school how to fight. Sounds like the academy, Naruto commented whilst he stuffed his face with a large bite out of his egg salad sandwich. Boruto hummed, not answering. They both sat in silence for a few minutes, too busy eating to talk. An aching feeling started growing at the front of Naruto's head, pounding like something was trying to break out of his head by splitting open his forehead. He groaned lightly, placing his sandwich down to rub his forehead and relieve some of the headache. Boruto stopped chewing in front of him and watched him in concern. Are you okay? Why, yeah, just a little headache. Naruto groaned again, closing his head as the pain intensified. Boruto leaned closer, worried. I'm fine, I'm just. He smiled at a small blonde child as he made the hand seal to summon clones, the child squealing in delight when two other blonde men popped into existence from the porch. A woman with short black hair and an even smaller child turned to look at him and the blonde kid, but he couldn't see any of their expressions or features. He was about to say something when the blonde kid latched onto his arm. Why was it covered in bandages? Say to Naruto. Boruto slapped Naruto's face on. Naruto held his swollen cheek and glared at Boruto. Why the hell did you do that? You were in a trance. Boruto's tone was worried, even if his eyes were glaring daggers. I thought you were going through a stroke, so you slapped me. I didn't know what to do. Boruto's distress was clear as even other customers were staring at them in concern. Dear customers. Their waiter smiled politely at them. I apologize, but I ask that you'd leave, please. You're disturbing the other customers. They didn't fight him, packing their breakfast and going out of the establishment. They were outside. Boruto glared at him. Now look what you did. What I did? You were the one who slapped me. Naruto couldn't believe him. Boruto huffed and held the bag of unfinished sandwiches in his hand. Well, might as well head back to the hospital, the one-eyed teen said, and thought Hima might be hungry when she wakes up. Hello. Naruto waved his hand in front of him. Are you ignoring me? Boruto glanced at him for a moment before smirking and turning away. He walked away from the seething Naruto, quickly jumping to the low roof of a shop and from there to the roof of one of the taller buildings, making his way to the hospital. A stomach growl reminded Naruto Boruto had just walked away with half of his breakfast. Hey Boruto, wait up. Damn it. Gaara stood on top of the hospital roof overlooking his village. He luckily found that Temari had left him clothes next to his hospital bed, so he changed out of his hospital gown. Before walking out of his room, looking at the sky, he wondered if the place you go to after you die is somewhere above the clouds. It feels strange. He determined to die and then come back. That thought reminded him of Chio, and he made a mental note to go visit her grave later. For some reason he was feeling melancholic, reminiscing of his childhood, all those days he spent alone and hurting, all the hatred he carried inside of him now gone with the Ichibi. Well, maybe not completely. On some level it was also how he felt, not how only the beast felt. Gazing up to the sky, he felt a slightly empty. He may not have chosen to carry the Ichibi within him, but to some extent knowing the Tanuki was there was comforting. And now he was alone again. No, he shook his head. Not alone. I have people around me now, people who care about me. Oh, a surprised voice came from behind him. He turned around to see a familiar girl standing near the stairs that lead to the roof. Hello. She smiled at him, her long black hair moving to the side as she tilted her head. Around her neck was a Konoha forehead protector and also what seemed to be a white blindfold cloth, looking like it was yanked off and barely hanging onto her neck like a makeshift necklace. Gaara nodded at her. Hello. He greeted her. He knew she came with Naruto to help save him, but with all that was going on he hadn't had the chance to ask for her name. She tucked a loose strand behind her ear and walked closer to him. I'm Himawari. She offered him her hand from Konoha. He shook her hand. I'm Gaara of the Sand, he told her, feeling odd as he knew as the Kazekage he was quite famous. I know, she said, clasping her hands behind her back. After all, you're pretty famous here, Lord Kazekage. Gaara nodded. I suppose he felt inclined to say being the Kazekage doesn't allow for a lot of privacy. I didn't mean that. Himawari shook her head. I meant that it seems you're really loved by your people. Gaara blinked, dumbfounded. Where did she get that from? How can you say that with certainty? He asked her, tilting his head. She pointed at him. Because they were all so worried about you when you were gone. She crossed her arms and nodded as if she was explaining a complicated notion to a child. When people care about you, they worry. That's just how it is it? Gaara had very little experience with those kind of relationships. Himawari nodded enthusiastically. Of course, when I was young, Big Brother and Papa always worked really hard, so me and Mama would stay up and wait for them to come back safely. Gaara nodded. Even if he hadn't really understood, he never had a mother, and his father sure wasn't a model parent. He only started getting closer to his siblings after meeting Naruto, and he still wasn't as comfortable with them as he wished to be. But still, he asked, are you close with your family? Himawari's shoulders tensed for a moment, before relaxing again. Yes, she nodded, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Me and Big Brother are pretty close, and I have my uncle and my aunt too. And Sarada. Gaara frowned. What about your parents? A small breeze of wind greeted their face and rustled their clothing, making Himawari's hair sweep to the side. They passed away a while back. Oh, Gaara tried to think of something comforting to say. I'm sorry, it's okay. Himawari placed a hand on her chest. Because they're still here? What do you mean? Gaara wondered if other people would understand without having to ask so many questions. It means Himawari's hand closed on the fabric of her yellow hoodie. That as long as I keep the memories of them and how they made me feel, they'll never be truly forgotten. I see. Gaara nodded, because it made sense. They stayed silent for a few minutes, just staring at the sky and the village. Gaara glanced at Himawari, who had a distant look in her eyes. Himawari, the meaning popped into his head, and without noticing he had already sent the sand around him to work. Himawari was shaken out of her thoughts by the sound of rustling sand gathering around them. She turned to look, only to find that the entire roof of the building had been transformed into a garden of sand sunflowers. Whoa, her eyes lit up. It seems my sand has taken it upon itself to create the flower from your name. Gaara observed her for a reaction. Would she be disgusted or appalled by such act? But instead it seemed like she was incredibly excited. She leaned closer to inspect the details of the few of the flowers closest to her. This is amazing, she informed him with a bright smile. Gaara blinked in surprise. Is it? He looked at the flowers, puzzled. What about it would be so amazing? Yes, she laughed. You're a really nice person, Lord Kazekage. Nice, that's a new one. Is that so? A shadow of a smile etched onto his features. Himawari nodded enthusiastically to show her belief on the matter. It's like pandas. He had a vague idea of the animal. It was the bear with white and black coloring, right? Yes, she clapped her hands from afar. The panda looks like a really scary bear with sharp claws and teeth, right? Gaara nodded for the sake of it, but when you get close you see it's just a cuddly bear that eats leaves. She pointed at the sunflowers and then at him. You're like a panda. Gaara didn't know how to take that. Are you saying I should eat leaves? No, she laughed. I'm saying people may find you scary at first, but the closer they get to you, the more they'll see how amazing you are. She smiled at him, practically grinning. And finally Gaara understood why he had been feeling so comfortable with her so far. You remind me of Naruto, he told her, making her halt and look at him for a moment unmoving. And once he finally got a real look at her, it supported his theory even more. She had the same kind blue eyes. Her cheeks were even covered with whiskers. Though her hair was black, she exuded an air that made him relax. Her expression was one of wonderment and a bit of happiness. How come? He nodded, his arms crossed against his chest. You too exude the same aura. Something about you is relaxing, Gaara told her, making her look bashful. Naruto is the same way. She giggled, though once again it seemed like her smile didn't reach her eyes, because Gaara could see them filling with unshed tears. I'm sorry, he was quick to apologize. I didn't mean to make you cry. Oh, she laughed at his hasty apology and wiped her tears away before they fell from her eyes. I'm okay, really. Also, she lowered her voice to a whisper, I'm not actually allowed to cry. Gaara frowned. Why not? She pointed at the white blindfold resting against her collarbone, her expression the one of a conspirator sharing sensitive information. To be honest, I'm not supposed to take it off for a while since I can't strain my eyes. Then why did you? He didn't understand. Because for a person like me. Himawari closed her eyes just as the breeze was starting to pick up again. She opened her arms, as if to hug the sky. Not seeing anything is like taking away my ability to feel. I have to see things. That's just how those who are connected to their vision are. She opened her eyes and looked at him. For me, looking at people and things is the greatest joy. It's as easy as breathing. Don't you have anything like that? Gaara pondered about it for a second. I don't know, he admitted eventually. She laughed. It seemed like she did that often. It's okay, she assured him. Not everyone can say what it is right away, but you will find out eventually. You just need. She tapped at her temple near her eye to Look closer. Gaara stared at her for a moment, knowing he missed another social K. When it finally connected for him, he huffed a chuckle and smiled. I see. Himawari giggled. Now you're doing it too. Perhaps. Hima, where'd you go? A voice came from behind them. Ascending the stairs was a person Gaara was sure was Naruto until he got a closer look. The guy may have had the same blonde spiky hair and similar physique. His face was rounder than Naruto's, and instead of 2 blue eyes he only had one, the other sealed closed with a scar stretching down his face. Both his cheeks were covered with white patches, not whiskers, but other than those little things the guy could pass as one of Naruto's clones. There you are. I've been looking for you all over the hospital. The guy walked towards Himawari and then stopped when he noticed Gaara. Oh hi. Hello. Gaara nodded at him. Lord Kazekage, this is my big brother, Boruto. Himawari introduced them and then turned to Boruto. I'm fine, big brother. You have to stop worrying so much all the time. It's bad for your wounds. Like you can talk. Boruto scoffed. How are you even walking right now without your crutches? Gaara looked down and noticed for the first time that Himawari's right foot was covered in a cast. To hold it in place it was just a little walk. I don't really need the crutches. Himawari rubbed her neck nervously. And why is your blindfold off? I wanted to see the sky. She tried. Boruto sighed and walked behind his sister, untying the blindfold and replacing it on her forehead before starting to tie it again. Himawari, he said, his expression filled with exasperation, though his tone was caring. The reason you need the blindfold is because you really went too far with straining your eyes. You could go blind from that. He finished tying it and then you won't ever be able to look at the sky again. Gaara could tell Boruto was worried for his sister, as his tone was similar to the one Temari used when hearing of a reckless thing Kankuro did, or when seeing the workload Gaara had in his office. I'm sorry. Himawari looked down Boruto's side and then smiled at her, ruffling her hair. Come on, he said, let's go back, right? She nodded, a small smile on her lips. Turning to Gaara she waved. It was nice seeing you again, Lord Kazekage. Gaara didn't wave. A hand made out of sand did, making Himawari giggle. She pulled down her blindfold and started ascending the stairs back down to her room, making Gaara wonder how she could move so much with her vision obscured. Boruto looked at Gaara for a second before rubbing the back of his neck. I'm glad you're alright, Lord Kazekage. Before Gaara even had the chance to process his words, the blonde was ascending the stairs on his sister's trail. Gaara's vision, blurred like fog, covered the world at the back of his head. A headache began to form like something that was trapped there, begged to be released. The pain intensified with each heartbeat of his until it's good to see you, Gaara. A blonde man whose face Gaara couldn't make out shook his hand. They appeared to be in a corridor of a home. The man turned his head slightly back. Hey, you two, come say hello. From the shadows 2 little children appeared, one with blonde hair like the man and another with black hair. He couldn't see their faces, but by their body language he could tell they were hesitant to get closer to him. Gaara crouched down to look them in the eyes as his sand slid out of its gourd and fell to the floor in a heap, then rising up and transforming into a hand made out of sand that waved at them. Immediately he heard noises of awe coming from the boy, and the girl was making sounds of delight. He smiled watching how they both high-fived the sand hand and compared how it was like by high-fiving each other. He heard a chuckle from above them and turned to look up, but the blonde man's face still weren't clear. That's pretty amazing, Gaara. What? Gaara blinked. He looked around, seeing he was back on the roof. But wasn't he at the home of someone else just a moment ago? What happened? Hey Niji. Tenten's hesitant voice told Niji exactly what she was going to ask. Team Guy just exited Kakashi's room and he was walking with them to the lobby before stopping by Himawari's room to see how she's doing. What is it? He asked, mentally preparing. When are you going to explain to us how Himawari has the Byakugan? There it is, Niji thought to himself. I suppose hoping they'll forget about it was just wishful thinking, not. Now was his answer. I will tell you soon, he hurried to add, seeing his teammates' expressions, but it'll have to wait until we're back at Konoha. This isn't the time. Guy nodded. Very well, we will keep this a secret until then. Niji gave them a small rare smile. Thank you, as long as Himawari isn't your secret love child or something, Tenten added teasingly. Niji's head turned to her so fast he was sure he heard his neck crack. Tenten, he didn't know whether he was angry or disgusted. She is 4 years younger than us. Tenten shrugged. Hey, I said, as long as she's not. Didn't I? The Hyuga closed his mouth and simply glared at her. Unbelievable. What, you're leaving already? Kankuro sounded surprised at the news. You can stay a little longer. Come on, Kankuro's right. Temari looked at the Konoha shinobi with concern. At least a day or 2 more. She tried to coerce them. You need time to rest. Naruto smiled at them. Believe me, I wish we could. He told the siblings. They were standing in Gaara's office. The recently revived Kazekage, sitting at his desk wearing a baggy black shirt, still not completely recovered. To his side were his older siblings and his advisor Baki. Me too, Sakura added, but we must report back to Lady Tsunade right away. I see. Temari sighed. Kakashi cleared his throat. Besides, if the Akatsuki managed to penetrate this far into Suna, I'm worried about Konoha's safety. Baki nodded. I understand you want to Get back as soon as possible. Yes, Kakashi affirmed. Exactly. Even so, Baki continued glancing at Kakashi worryingly. In your condition, don't worry. Kakashi glanced to his right where Guy stood supporting his body weight by slinging Kakashi's arm over his shoulders. I have comrades I can relay. Get me there. He's right about that. Guy hit his chest with his fist. By the way, the Suna advisor said we already dispatched the preliminary report with Takemaru, but there was no mention in it of the fates of the 2 Akatsuki members. Won't you want to inform your village? I'll report those to the Hokage myself, Kakashi assured him. You see, there's something else troubling me. Tsunade sat in her office as Shizen read the report from Suna to her. Lady Chiyo of Sunagakure was the only casualty. Shizen read aloud. The Kazekage has been returned to his village safely. Team Guy and Team Kakashi have completed their missions and are scheduled to return to the village in 3 days. What about our 3 travelers? Tsunade looked at Shizen. Nothing, my lady. Very well. The Hokage sighed and closed her eyes. So Chiyo of Sunagakure is gone, huh? Almost makes me feel like it's time I bit the dust, my lady. If I may. Shizen began. What is it? Despite the fact that this mission was successful, her assistant trailed. I'm wondering if Master Jiraiya wasn't right to question the wisdom of sending Naruto a Jinchuriki to face an enemy that we know is on the hunt for the tailed beast. Shizen looked straight at her, indicating how serious she was. Even if we send a former Umbu member like Kakashi to protect him, wasn't it taking an enormous risk sending Naruto on such a mission? Tsunade looked down on her intertwined hands. It's because Naruto is what he is that I send him. Hearing Shizen make a surprised sound, she looked at her. The only one who can truly understand a Jinchuriki is another Jinchuriki. Besides, Naruto's got that mysterious power, one that makes everyone he meets want to bet on him. She saw Shizen look down in shame and smiled. And besides, she added, I didn't send only Kakashi to protect him. After all, our 3 travelers were there too, didn't they? Shizen smiled. I guess so. Boruto may act like he doesn't care, but I know he loves Naruto a lot just by how he talks about him. I knew they were going to be okay in the end. Of course, my lady. Sarada leaned on Boruto as they stood in the Sunagakure cemetery. Chiyo's brother stood in front of his sister's grave while the rest of them stood further away, giving the man a few moments alone with her. This must be an awful feeling, Sarada told Boruto. Losing your sibling, I can't even imagine it. I don't need to imagine it, Boruto said, the empty space between them growing larger. Sarada took a deep breath. Never again, she promises. Losing Himawari after losing both their parents and the village might be what finally breaks Boruto, and that's a sight she wishes to never see. They walked closer to the grave together, with the rest of the group, Himawari leaning on Niji and Kakashi on Guy while Boruto supported Sarada. Sarada stared at the name engraved on the stone. Chiyo, simple as that, such a simple way to simplify a whole life lived by an amazing, courageous and outgoing person. She thought back to her parents who didn't even get a proper burial because there were no bodies nor time for it. Now she's 20 years in the past, her young mother standing a few meters away from her and her young father nowhere to be found. Was she just walking into the same tragedy again? Only slower. In all the history books she read about her parents' time, Chiyo also died during the Kazekage rescue. So what has really changed? Even with the 3 of them there, Chiyo's brother walked forward. She didn't want a headstone on her grave, he remarked, but despite her wishes, I felt it was better to have one. Sarada wondered how her mother and father would have preferred to be buried. Probably something simple, elegant, and clean, perhaps a shared grave so they can be together forever, catch up on all the time they missed while he was away. Maybe they would have wanted to be buried with the rest of the Uchiha clan, with their names had been added to the stone. Kakashi always went to visit everyone. Say your farewells, Kakashi told them gently. They all looked down and closed their eyes, sending their goodbyes to the old woman who risked her life and then gave them away for another to live. Let's go, Guy told them after a few minutes of silence. For a change, Lee answered softly. Right, Teen Guy and Kakashi turned away, leaving only Naruto, Sakura, Boruto and Sarada standing in front of the headstone. My friends, we really should be going, Lee called them. Right. Naruto turned to them and started walking. Come on, Sakura, it's time to go. You too, Sarada. Boruto tugged on her arm. We need to get going. Sakura walked forward and placed her palm on the stone for a moment before pulling back slowly and walking away. Sarada was about to do the same until she saw Sakura look back at the grave with fondness and smile and just turned away instead. She couldn't do the same because that would mean saying a final farewell. In her heart, Sarada wondered if one day she'll be able to say her final farewells to her parents, or if she'll forever carry that gaping hole in her chest. At the entrance to the village, they said their goodbyes to the Kazekage and his siblings. Well, so long. Kankuro gave them a smile. Yeah, Naruto smiled back at him before turning to Gaara. They looked at each other for a few moments before Naruto broke the silence. I guess this is where people are supposed to shake hands and get all choked up. He chuckled awkwardly, but I've never really been good at that stuff either, so let's just leave it. His speech was cut short when he noticed Gaara extending his hand to him with a small smile. Naruto blinked and stared at him unbelieving. He managed to smile, happy that in the end his friend was truly and finally alright. Sand particles hovered around his hand, moving it up until it reached Gaara's, and they finally shook hands. See ya, Gaara. Naruto told him. You too, Naruto. Gaara replied. Yeah. Lord Kazekage Himawari chimed in. If you're ever in Konoha, come by and have dinner with us. Gaara smiled at her. I will, thank you. Boruto raised an eyebrow at the interaction. Since when are you two friends? Himawari just smiled at him. I'm friends with everyone. That got a laugh out of the whole group, and on that note they departed, making their way back to Konoha.